Fears and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 9. 2 ends were all she had left. Still, standing up and connecting them felt impossible. The orbs always stayed in her peripheral, but Oya turned her head to catch a glimpse anyway. If you are who I think you are, I could use your help now. For the first time since noticing them, they moved into full view. All 6 of them. Their normal soft glow brightened and rested on her body. Oya hadn't meant to gasp, but she couldn't help it. Pain she didn't realize was there vanished. Energy coursed through her. When did I last feel whole? This was cheating. It had to be. But everything she did was a cheat, wasn't it? Grabbing both ends, she twisted them together. One more time she blew on them. Her essence wrapped around the ends, and they melted into each other. That's right! That's right! Yu Yu's voice startled her, and beyond the net was movement. It was brighter, more colorful, vivid. I really did it? Of all the things Oya did recently, this was the hardest to believe. No matter how she tried, the larger holes were ugly. Gaps of various sizes marred the net. But it was the best she could do. That was all the material she had to work with. But if it felt right to Yu Yu, that's all that mattered. I can see again! Where are you? I hadn't thought of that. Not that it mattered. Dreams were her playground. Who would Yu Yu feel most comfortable with? A wicked grin curled her lips. I haven't been old in a while. With that thought, Oya morphed into an old woman and appeared in the middle of an active galaxy of beauty and wonder. I'm right here. Indescribable joy filled everything. Pink eyes and tight black curls ran toward her. The appearance of an old woman didn't faze Yu Yu in the least, though it was possible the girl didn't notice through the tears. Yu Yu hugged the old woman's waist, squeezing tighter and tighter, refusing to let go. A short while longer, young one, then you'll wake up. Gnarled hands patted the girl's head before hugging her back. Is this enough for a monster to become human? Sheets of metal mocked his weakness. Z'a'd show the metal what he was capable of, but his hands hurt. Stiffness impeded their movement. Joints and muscle cried out their protest, and blisters disfigured his skin, taking their time callousing. Making a box today wasn't going to happen, but that didn't mean there was nothing to do. It didn't take long for his mom to answer his call request. Hi, Mama. Z'ao gave a bright smile. Herard's wrong. I'll prove it. I hope I'm not interrupting, but it's been a while since we just relaxed and talked. The smile the Nua returned was even brighter. You know I'm always happy to find time for you. How are you doing? I got word you'd been missing classes. A raised eyebrow was all it took to beat guilt into Z'ao. I'm sorry. I guess I'm like you when I get drawn into a project. Her smile softened and she raised a screen for Z'ao to see. There's plenty here to get drawn into after you graduate. I'm sorry. Z'ao opened his mouth to direct the conversation to her, but she beat him. What has so thoroughly consumed you, son? Answering was tempting. It'd do wonders for their relationship with North Chuzo. Granted, East Azute was in no condition to be picky concerning their alliances, but his mom never particularly cared for that nation. I've never been able to get her to tell me why. I thought I'd found some information concerning the scientist who developed the cure. It's silly, but I want to thank that person someday. A soft sigh left his mom. I understand, but if the scientist wishes to remain anonymous, the least we can do is respect that. I know. I was being selfish. Call it my last childish act. Turning 20 doesn't mean you're suddenly not a child. It's a process. Yeah, one I should have had years to experience. How about you? How are you doing, Mom? Her smile turned coy. The food situation's handled, till we can get the farms running again. We're working with Master Huey to arrange supplies and teachers for a new generation of farmers. The program should be ready by the end of winter. I'll work on that. I'd like greeting Master Huey as well. Zhao smiled and tried turning the conversation again. I'm glad things are looking promising for our people. But how are you doing? The stress of carrying all this out on your own. The Nua waved her hand. There's plenty of chances to meet Master Huey, but make sure you call him Grandpa. Grandpa? Why's that? You know, he never would give me a straight answer. Laughter spilled out of his mom. But don't worry about any of this yet. I have plenty of help. That's good. Blue-black eyes drifted to the 3 malformed boxes by the window. Each was better than the last, even if they weren't good. No, Herard isn't right. I have to prove it. Their conversation continued for a good hour, but no matter how many times he asked about her, she never answered. Tossing and turning, fire consumed Elby. It was everywhere. Throwing back the covers, he sat up and opened the curtains. Outside was beautiful. A full moon hung heavy, surrounded by the most magnificent cloak of stars. Mismatched eyes closed. This didn't banish the fire, but it was worth a try. Giving up, he opened them. I don't want to think about this. He looked down at his hands. His heart stopped. Pain flooded his body. Burnt and bloody, missing nails. Smoke choked his lungs, not leaving him enough air to scream, and the fire. His hands pleaded for him to stop digging. It hurts so badly, it hurts. But he couldn't stop. If he did, they'd die. How could he run to safety and let his sister die? Something grabbed him, pulling him from the fire and rubble. No, I haven't reached her. Elby, are you okay? Any louder and you would have woken everyone. Heavy panting stole his words. Licking his lips, he looked around the room. He still sat on his bed, window open. It was still dark, save for the magnificent moon, and his sweet mate who shared a wall with him hovered inches above the floor. Snow-white hair framed midnight eyes. How you? I'm sorry. A nightmare. I didn't mean to wake you. That's all? Elby looked down at his hands. They were fine. Healer Herard did a magnificent job. His nails were back within days, and there wasn't a single scar. It was like the explosion never happened. Yeah, I'm sorry. And why are you crying? How you floated to sit next to Elby, handing him a cartoony stuffed fish while squeezing a stuffed dolphin. What was the nightmare about? Looking away, Elby thought. He was fine after it happened. For weeks it didn't bother him. What did he do wrong? How did he make this start? And how did he make it stop? I'm sorry. I don't remember. Nodding, How Yu laid back, resting his head on his hands, with the dolphin laying on his chest. Think you can sleep again? It's okay. I know you believe in those curses, but I'll be okay. Leaving a person alone after a nightmare was considered cruel for the Rufudar. It was said to leave the sufferer open to soul-damaging attacks, which was an interesting belief, one Elby didn't hold, but respected. Staying with How Yu whenever the Energist had a nightmare was a simple kindness he was glad to give, and normally he didn't mind his sweet mate returning the gesture. But he wanted to be alone right now. He wanted to figure out what was going on, and why now? It was terrifying. His heart still beat erratically, but he just wanted to be alone. Give me a minute, and I'll fall right back to sleep. You should go to bed. Water training's tomorrow, right? You need to be fully rested for that. How you smirk. Then it's a good thing you'll fall right back to sleep. Arguing's pointless, isn't it? You're almost to the islands. The elf smirked at his bewilderment. Do you have an answer? I was strolling the deck. Zephyr looked around the twilight beach, hand settling at his side. Or did my dream change suddenly? Your answer? I don't understand. The prince backed away at her intensity. Why do you hate him? There was no escape, no matter where he looked. The elf seized his arm. Show me where your hate began. What? Struggling, images flashed around them, until the twilight beach disappeared. Why did she bring me home? Well done. Aunt Tanalia stood tall and proud, but was a good decade younger. What are you going to teach me next? Zephyr's overzealous 5-year-old self turned to his aunt, hands flying in excitement. Did I really sound like that? Hearing his early voice was odd. That's all for your lessons today. She knelt next to the tiny golden boy. You remember me telling you about your cousin, the one who's like you, the one who'll start school with you? Yes, ma'am. Unquenchable curiosity curled the elf's lips. The scene continued, Tanalia explaining how as the older of the two, and future general, it was Zephyr's responsibility to care for his cousin. Why am I recalling this? You were excited to see your cousin, the elf leaned over. How does the rest of this go? His hands started moving, but stopped. I haven't thought about this in a long time. The door opened and a slender, regal woman entered, a toddler following close behind. Did he really look like that? The toddler was well-muscled with short, neatly trimmed brown hair, and his skin had the beautiful glow of life in it. I look scrawny next to him. Zephyr nearly laughed when he realized he was barely taller. Little hands tugged at the properly fitted clothing, and nearly colorless eyes darted around constantly. If not for those eyes, Zephyr wouldn't have recognized his cousin, a crystal blue so sharp they cut through whatever they landed on, and overflowing with uncertainty. How does a 2-year-old look like that? What's going to happen now, Zephyr? He'll bow to me as he always does. The Duchess, Aunt Tanalia, they look so young. Duchess Samoltz walked up to the general and bowed deeply. My general, I trust you're well. No need to stand on ceremony, Wimera. Winmera. The elf sniggered under her breath. Annoyed, Zephyr scolded her, hands emphasizing her rudeness. Show respect. She's Duchess of our most important province. Without her leadership, my citizens would be starving right now. Really? Ridiculous name or not, that impressed the elf. Wimera stood to her full height and looked down at the toddler clutching her hem. Sharply she cleared her throat. This made the young Ferdinan tremble, but he walked to the little prince. He can move that gracefully? Another clearing of the Duchess's throat caused Ferdinan to stumble. 5 paces from the young Zephyr, he dropped to one knee and bowed his head, staying perfectly still and perfectly silent. Hi, my name's Zephyr. The prince smiled, moving toward his groveling cousin. The toddler shook harder. This is Ferdinan. The Duchess smiled warmly at the little prince. Tanalia knelt beside both her nephews. Ferdinan, would you like to play with Zephyr? Do you want to play, Ferdinan? Both the elf and he grinned at young Zephyr's struggle with the part of Ferdinand's name. The little prince smiled and grabbed his cousin's arm to pull him up. but Ferdinan gasped, falling backwards. Onyx's eyes stayed fixed on the scene. He never did. Tanalia rushed forward, causing the toddler to flinch into a ball. Taking his arms, she lifted the trembling, grimacing Ferdinan to his feet. I finally get a good look at you, dear. Those blue crystals widened in terror, turning to his mother for direction. The entire time he squirmed, ready to cry, until the general released him. He never liked being touched. Those are definitely his father's eyes. The general studied her youngest nephew. One Mara, are you sure they classified him correctly? His musculature is spot on for a fighter. A small, unamused smile flashed on her lips. I'm certain. The Duke is perfectly capable of classifying a child. I'm just feeding him too well. I should reevaluate his diet before he ends up with health problems. Muscle is different from fat, Mara. It is, the Duchess agreed. But he's a scientist. Ferdinan, do as our prince commands. He simply asked a question, Tanalia objected. Yes, Prince Zephyr is polite and kind. A sweet smile glowed on her face when she bowed to her prince, but hardened again when addressing Ferdinan. Don't keep him waiting. Little Ferdinan stood there shaking. Smiling, young Zephyr took his hand again, only for him to jerk it away. Their eyes met, and for a moment it seemed both would cry. Would you like to play, Ferdinan? Tanalia kindly repeated. Zephyr's excited to play with you. I was excited. I always wanted a younger sibling. Present-day Zephyr mumbled beside the elf. There's no need speaking to him like an infant. He's a scientist. He's more than capable of understanding adults and acting accordingly. The harshness of the Duchess's voice eased Ferdinand's discomfort. Well, do you want to? The little prince tried again. When a tiny nod came, Zephyr pulled him into a run. At first Ferdinan stumbled, but by the time they reached the door, his run was as fast and graceful as the little prince's. The elf stood smirking, a knowing look on her face. But older Zephyr was visibly confused. Am I remembering this right? That smirk intensified. This is straight from your mind. They watched young Zephyr drag his little cousin around until the Duchess ended their play. When she entered, the Duchess knelt as she'd taught her son to do. My prince, it's time for dinner. Okay, Duchess. She never let me call her anything but Duchess. I don't know why. Young Zephyr ran up to his aunt and gave her a hug. 5 paces back, Ferdinan waited. When Zephyr turned, he was stopped short by a new look in those blue eyes. Jealousy, intense and burning. Releasing the Duchess returned Ferdinand's expression back to what it had been all day, one the young Zephyr couldn't interpret. Now, my prince, there's something you need to know. Yes, Duchess? Forgetting the odd exchange, the little prince gave his full attention to his aunt. Your cousin's starting school with you because he's intelligent, but he isn't wise. He's also willful and stubborn. As his elder, and the future general, you're responsible to keep him in line, if forced by necessary. You'll never become a great general if you can't make one child behave. Do whatever you feel is needed. Confusion and uncertainty filled the little prince's face. Yes, ma'am. Both observers watched the memory fade. A golden finger tapped his forehead, and then his heart, and shook his head. I think she's told me that many times. Think? That's a silly thing to forget. The elf turned to him, a wide-eyed grin on her face. What else have you forgotten?